Ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to relive some history here at Eielson Air Force Base. Fast throttles are coming forward on some classic aircraft from World War II. Leading the way is the North American T-6 Texan. You heard me talk about this just a few moments ago. The advanced trainer known as the Power Maker and the L-13 taking off. L-birds, many of them were simply civilian aircraft crashed in the military service during World War II. During World War II, helicopters were still being developed and were not available to the military services during the war. So aircraft like the L-birds, what we call liaison aircraft, were used in that role as they could easily take off from grass strips, unprepared areas. Being small and light, they could get into close locations, deliver messages, information. They were used for artillery spotting during World War II, as these aircraft could stay over the target area for quite a while. The T-6 Texan had quite a long history. Not only was it used, of course, for advanced training during World War II, used by the Army, who called it the T-6 Texan, the Navy called it the SNJ, and if you were in the Royal Canadian Air Force, it was known as the Harvard. And the L-13, again, the liaison aircraft used for observational spotting, delivery of messages. As a matter of fact, some liaison aircraft were equipped to carry stretchers on the inside so they could actually evacuate wounded personnel out of the combat zone. L-birds, of course, very slow. They didn't carry any armament during World War II, except the 45 that the pilot would have on his side. That was about it. But as you can see, the aircraft were very maneuverable. Again, easy on gas so they could stay over the enemy target for a long time, and were used to observe enemy troop movements and to make sure that artillery is hitting the right spot. The T-6 Texan coming in right behind. A little wing wave to all the fine folks here at Eielson Air Force Base. North American Aviation was the manufacturer of the T-6 Texan. They were also the producer of the legendary P-51 Mustang and the B-25 medium bomber used during World War II. T-6 Texans were used by over 45 nations after World War II to train pilots around the world. As a matter of fact, the country of South Africa has declared the T-6 Texan a national treasure. But these are the types of aircraft that our grandfathers would have flown. It's amazing to think now that we're looking at 80 years since the outbreak of World War II. It began on September 1st, 1939, when Germany attacked Poland. America would not officially enter the war until after the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. The L-13 coming back around again. You can see that large observation windows were fitted on the aircraft. That would happen a lot with these civilian aircraft like the J-3 Cub, the L-4 as it was known in the Army. Again, more windows that would be placed for observation, making it easier to see 360 degrees all the way around. Dane Patterson, we have located your wallet and driver's license as well, so make your way up to Show Center, and Dane will get you reacquainted with your wallet. Dane Patterson, make your way up here to the Show Center to reacquire your wallet. There's a big black truck parked right out here at Show Center in front of the control tower. That's how you'll find us. T-6 Texan, again used for advanced training during World War II. This would have been the very first aircraft that an Air Corps or Navy cadet would have climbed into that had retractable landing gear and performance that would be very similar to the fighting aircraft that he would fly into combat. For most air cadets, this would have been a hot rod 80 years ago, as they learned the art of aerial combat. SNJs can actually be fitted with .30 caliber machine guns in the rear cockpit for air-to-air gunnery training. Not only did the T-6 serve in World War II, but this aircraft would also go on to serve during the Korean War in what were known as mosquito missions. Again, this aircraft could be flown over enemy positions. Smoke rockets would be attached to the wings, underneath the wings, and these rockets could be used to locate and spot enemy artillery for the ground forces. The T-6 would serve in our military forces until being retired in the late 1950s. They would be used at Air National Guard bases all across the United States. And there's a nice close-up view of this legendary aircraft from World War II, the T-6 Texan. The Navy version, the SNJ, could also be fitted with an arrestor hook. This could be used to actually land on aircraft carriers. The T-6 Texan again, the SNJ, one of the great aircraft from World War II that we just couldn't have done without, as again, literally every pilot flew this aircraft. The Canadians use this aircraft extensively, known as the Harvard. A little bit of a difference that you can actually see on the outside is the exhaust stack on a Harvard was actually extended all the way down the side of the fuselage, and that was to kind of get those fumes and everything away. As in Canada and the north, up here in Alaska, of course, you didn't fly with the canopy open too much. It's kind of cold up here, so they'd have to fly with the canopies closed, and to make sure that the exhaust and everything didn't come back inside the cockpit, they extended the exhaust ring further down the canopy, down the side of the fuselage rather, so you can easily identify a Harvard as opposed to a T-6 or an SNJ. And again, you can see how L-birds, again, were so valuable during World War II. As he turns south into the wind, you can see just how slow that aircraft can really go as he faces into the wind, and again, can land in extremely tight areas. Helicopters, of course, were being developed during World War II, but again, they would not be readily available for rescue as they are today. It was still a new technology that was being birthed in the skies, and L-birds, of course, continued to fly all throughout World War II. They served in every theater of operation, from the Aleutians, from Alaska, down into the South Pacific, China, Burma, India theater, in Europe. L-birds were everywhere. These little fighter planes were quite amazing. Not fighters, little liaison aircraft were quite amazing. As a matter of fact, a L-bird was credited with shooting down, or downing, not shooting down I should say, but downing an ME-109, which is a German fighter during World War II. As a German fighter pilot thought he had an easy kill when he found the L-bird flying. But this is not going to take very long to shoot down. And because of the maneuverability of the L-birds, he was actually able to maneuver that ME-109 right into a hillside. And the pilot was actually credited with an aerial kill during World War II. You know, it's always amazing to see these aircraft flying in the skies anywhere in the world today. As we know, a lot of these aircraft exist in museums all across the United States and around the world. But there's nothing like watching these aircraft do what they were designed to do so many years ago, and that's to fly. And that's one of the reasons why so many men and women across the world, around the world, and here in the States are doing such an incredible job of keeping these legendary planes in the skies so that we, the future generations, can see these incredible legendary planes doing the very thing they were designed to do, and that's to fly. And to demonstrate the firepower of the United States Armed Forces during World War II, which literally started out in biplanes. Monoplanes were just beginning to be introduced into the Army and the Navy during World War II. And by the end of the war, jets were quickly in development. So it is really an amazing time in history in aviation when you think about it, that only a handful of years before we were flying fabric-covered, wire-filled biplanes over the skies, and then just in a matter of few years, we have jet aircraft, and then only 2 years after World War II, breaking the sound barrier. Now here's a demonstration of a very short landing. Again, this shows you what an L-bird could do and why they were so valuable during World War II. As you didn't even have to have a runway. As long as you had a clear piece of grass down on there, anywhere in the world, there the L-bird could quickly land and get into position. Look at that. Again, you can see why these aircraft were so valuable during the war, as they could get into those tight spots, get messages in, spot for artillery, and do so much more. L-birds, again, served a great service during World War II. Didn't get all the glamour, of course, as fighters would, fighter pilots would. But again, every part of the system is important. Every part, whether we think it's flashy or not, even in the military, is very, very important for the success of any mission. And you're going to see a little bit later on, in just a few moments, as we do our joint demonstration, as you're going to see forces from the United States Army and Air Force combining together to work together to win victory here in Eielson, as we're going to turn it into an enemy airfield, and we're going to attack this airfield and reclaim it. And we'll be doing that with the help of the aircraft you see parked out in front of you. The F-16, the F-35, the F-22s, KC-135, the C-17. You're literally going to see a military demonstration right in front of us here at Eielson on a beautiful day for an air show, the Arctic Lightning Air Show. So it's amazing to be able to contrast the aviation history. And one thing I've always enjoyed about air shows, again, looking at how far our technology has come, and to appreciate the history that we all celebrate as Americans. As a matter of fact, while we got just a few moments, I want anybody in the crowd today, if you are a military veteran, if you are a veteran of any of our armed forces, I want you to raise your hand. Raise your hand if you are a veteran of any of our services. Now, the rest of us, let's put our hands together and thank these men and women for what they've done for this country. Thank you. Words cannot express enough of what you guys mean to us and how much you've done for this nation. So thank you. And to all our active military personnel, let's give them a big round of applause. Come on. And we thank each and every one of you here at Eielson Air Force Base for what you're doing 24/7. There are so many things that go on at Air Force bases that we don't know anything about, and sometimes I'm glad, because I may not want to have to think about some of this stuff, but there are men and women that are doing it 24/7, and we salute all our military personnel for their service. There's a beautiful sight, classic T-6 Texan, with the moon in the background. Amazing aircraft. It took to the skies over 80 years ago, and it shows you that yes, we can build things that last, as these aircraft, if they had to, could literally do exactly the same jobs they were called to do over 80 years ago. Aircraft like the P-51 Mustang, the P-38 Lightning, the Thunderbolt, B-17s, B-25, they're so well preserved and so well put together that literally, if they had to, we can load them back up and fight again. It's amazing to watch these aircraft, legendary planes from 80 years ago, one of the greatest conflicts ever. And of course, the birth of fighter aviation, really the Air Force came out of World War II. During World War II, the Air Force was actually a part of the Army. It was known as the Army Air Corps. It wasn't until 1947 that the Air Force became a separate military entity. The L-13 safely back down on the deck. And the T-6 Texan getting ready to touch down. A beautiful example of that aircraft with us today. Very nicely restored. It's really amazing to think that 80 years ago, all across the United States and even here in Alaska, aircraft like these were being flown by our Army and Navy cadets, getting ready to take to the skies of the South Pacific, the China Permanent India Theater, Europe, North Africa, the Aleutian Islands. A lot of history shared by these famous aircraft. And we can get a nice close-up look as the T-6 taxis back in. Tandem cockpit with the cadet sitting in the front chair, the trainer sitting in the back seat.